Good afternoon and welcome to the Humidor Report. Justin here. Sorry we missed you last week, but we are back with, I guess, now our first New Year's episode. Hope everybody had a great, wonderful New Year. Safe New Year's Eve, no doubt. But as we move into the new year, as always, what is new is old is new again at some given point. And what we're talking about today is actually one of the oldest continually produced cigar brands in the game, but it's also something very, very, very new. If you have been around the cigar world for a little while, you have probably at some point heard of the brand Fonseca, whether we were talking about the original Cuban Fonseca or we're talking about the one that has been created in the Dominican Republic for the last 45 years or so. Well, we're going to give you a little bit of history on the brand itself to kind of tell you where it was and tell you where Fonseca has come just within the last couple of recent years. Now, the brand was founded by Don Francisco y Fonseca, who was born in 1868. He founded the brand and launched a factory in Havana to make the cigars back in 1892. By 1907, he'd registered the brand name, and then by 1911, he had immigrated to New York State and opened a factory producing cigars there as well. Now, unfortunately, Don Francisco passed away suddenly and unexpectedly of a heart attack in 1929 while back in Cuba. He spent a lot of time back and forth between his New York operations and the Havana operations, overseeing both himself until his untimely passing. Now, once Don Francisco passed away, his widow merged with Castaneda and Montero was the name of the company, forming Castaneda, Montero, y Fonseca. That, I believe, stuck to the Cuban operations because I can't find much information, to be honest, about what happened with the production facilities and the production of Fonseca cigars in New York. You don't really see much about Fonseca outside of Cuba really until we get to the mid-1970s, and we'll get there in a minute. But to talk about the old Cuban brand for the moment, there were two hallmarks of this brand that was kind of a trailblazing effort, each in their own regard in the cigar industry. The Fonseca brand in Cuba was the first to use the Japanese washi paper, is what it's called. It's a very, very thin kind of tissue paper to wrap the cigars. These days, there aren't tons of cigars wrapped in tissue paper, but there are plenty. Even I know, say, we've got the CLEs and some of the Aroa products sitting right back here that should be able to be seen in the shot, but something that definitely uses that tissue paper wrap. Well, the Cuban Fonseca was the first to do that. Not only was that a first for Fonseca, they were the first one to use tubes for their cigars. Tin back then, aluminum as you see them today. But that was the two cigar trends that were created by Don Francisco, claiming both of those were to keep the perfect climate, the perfect humidity, to protect those cigars as they were being shipped around and distributed. But that's where tissue paper and tubes in the cigar world come from, is from the Cuban Fonseca. Now, even through all of these years, Fonseca is still produced in Cuba. It's produced at the Lazaro Peña factory, and it has remained unchanged. Even with the Cuban Revolution, there were really no changes to production or availability of Fonseca cigars in Cuba during and after the Revolution. The Cuban versions have been mostly popular in Spain and in Canada, is where the bulk of those are sold even today, and it is one of the milder Cuban cigars. Cuban cigars typically were known for their formidability, but Fonseca was always a very easygoing, mild, very nuanced kind of cigar. But it had such a distinct flavor profile to it that it was very, very, very popular, particularly, like I said, in countries like Spain and in Canada. Well, now we're going to fast forward to 1974, and that brings in Manolo Quesada. Manuel Quesada, Manolo to his friends. Quesada was the first to start making Fonseca cigars that were being made outside of Cuba. Now, Quesada started his production facilities in the Dominican Republic back in 1974 and has been producing Fonseca for many, 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 many years through his company, his factory MATASA, and his company SAG was the name of the distribution company for all of his cigars. Quesada also he has an Oktoberfest, the Quesada brand now, Casa Magna. That all came from Quesada. Well, a couple of years ago, Don Pepin Garcia of My Father fame, his daughter Yanni Garcia was talking to the Quesadas in Spain and started talking about the potential of a purchase of the brand. Well, as of December 2019, just over 2 years ago, my father acquired the Fonseca brand from Quesada. There are some changes with it. Definitely some changes. It's going to have the my father kind of flair. What we have been told about this, it is a Nicaraguan puro, so it's 100% Nicaraguan tobacco. The wrapper that you have on there is a shade-grown Corojo 99 Rosado. So Rosado being that reddish kind of color grading like you would hear Colorado, Maduro, Claro, so on and so forth. But you get that reddish kind of color because you're shade growing that Corojo 99 leaf, and it's all over Nicaraguan tobacco. And it is Nicaraguan grown wrapper leaf as well. My father and Yanni Garcia and those from my father have said about the brand is they're definitely trying to keep that same flavor profile of the Dominican-made Fonseca, but it's definitely going to have a little bit more of a my father touch. With that aggressive Nicaraguan spiciness that you're used to getting from Pepin's products, you will get some of that in there, but not while leaving the original Quesada flavor profile of Fonseca behind. And another interesting note about the Pepins tied to the Fonseca brand name, this brings us all the way back around to the Cuban Fonsecas. Back when Don Pepin and his son Jaime, Yanni's brother, were producing cigars in Baez, Cuba, they were making Fonseca cigars. So both Jaime and Don Pepin have had their hands in the cigar making process with the Cuban Fonsecas as well. So it was a neat tie for them to try and bring that into the my father, Don Pepin Garcia fold. So that is where we stand today with my father. That's where the brand comes from. That's where it is now. So largely different, largely the same in many ways, but with the story again that's dating back to the first produced Cuban Fonsecas, and I believe it was like 1892. So that goes way, way, way back. But we have finally brought in the My Father Fonsecas. We've got them on the shelf. We've got two of the sizes available. The Cedros here to my right and the Robustos that we have here to my left. Both on the shelf, both are smoking great. It's definitely a little different than the Quesada era Fonsecas, but still gonna remind you of that with a little bit of that my father's spice and Nicaraguan taste and quality that you're used to getting from the Pepins, the Garcias here over the years. So that is, I guess, gonna wrap it up for our first New Year's installment here of the Humidor Report. We thank you guys for tuning in. All things going as they should. We'll be back here with you next week, Wednesday, 3 p.m., same time, same channel. And until then, I'm Justin, and we'll see you at the club.